So I was working in corporate America for a while. And then back in 2012, somebody invited me to an angel investing meeting. And I thought, oh, cool. What's that? What is that? No idea what that is. So I went to the first meeting. I was totally fascinated to learn about what entrepreneurs are doing. And I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time. And I really thought that you had to live in, super big city like San Francisco or New York, and that you had to have
Mhm.
a lot of money, you had to be rich, you had to fly in a private plane, and like an average person was not going to be able to get involved in this.
Right.
But it turns out that nowadays, especially with a lot of the changes that have happened in the last 8 years or so, now anybody can invest for as little as even $50 in a startup company or a entrepreneurial company, which is super fun.
Welcome to Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast, the show where we ask the big question: what will they say about you when you're gone? Each week, we sit down with icons, trailblazers, and legends in the making to dive into their stories, scandals, and the legacies they're leaving behind. And now, here's your host, the video godfather himself, Lou Bortone.
Hey, it's Lou. Welcome back to the Oh Shit, I'm Dead podcast. And my guest today is Marcia Dawood, who I've known for several years and is just a really cool person. And I wanted to get her on as soon as possible. So thank you for being here, Marcia.
Happy to be here.
So tell folks what you do and tell them a little about, you can certainly mention your podcast as well, but just kind of lay the groundwork about what you do.
Yeah. So I was working in corporate America for a while. And then back in 2012, somebody invited me to an angel investing meeting. And I thought, oh, cool. What's that? What is that? No idea what that is. So I went to the first meeting. I was totally fascinated to learn about what entrepreneurs are doing. And I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time. And I really thought that you had to live in, super big city like San Francisco or New York, and that you had to have
Mhm.
a lot of money, you had to be rich, you had to fly in a private plane, and like an average person was not going to be able to get involved in this.
Right.
But it turns out that nowadays, especially with a lot of the changes that have happened in the last 8 years or so, now anybody can invest for as little as even $50 in a startup company or a entrepreneurial company, which is super fun. And as I would talk to people, though, they would be like, well, no, not me. I can't get involved. I'd be like, yes, you can, but it's really not something that we're talking about a whole lot. So I'm out to demystify it, out to talk more about it. So I got kind of frustrated a couple of years ago because, I'd made a couple of investments, but I'm not like the guys you see on Shark Tank. So I didn't have that kind of money. I ran out of money. So I just said, well, I can't make any more investments myself. What can I do? But I could start to help other people learn about it. So, maybe they could
Mhm.
start to make investments. And the more people we get doing it, the better, things could get. And we could make it easier for entrepreneurs to fundraise because it's really, really hard. So
Yeah.
I started a podcast in
Yes.
2021 called The Angel Next Door, and it's all about demystifying what angel investing is, who does it, why they do it, and we talk about all kinds of fun things there. And then in September of 2024, my book came out, Do Good While Doing Well. You can kind of see it right here, this
No,
way in the corner,
that,
and up there.
that's excellent. It's interesting because I lived on the West Coast for several years and I always thought, I talked about investing, any kind of investing was just Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley, so
Right, right, right.
I didn't think about that. And I also thought because I worked for somebody who sort of became a philanthropist, Chaim Saban, he had the children's wing of the LA hospital named after him. And he has a name on all kinds of stuff. So I thought, oh, well, legacy means putting your name on a hospital or a library or something, right?
Right, 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 right. But
So the
we
cool thing
we
is
don't have that kind of money, so yeah, we're not doing
yeah,
that.
not yet. But the cool thing is the other thing I realized was like, I guess that's sort of like with Kiva, like I give them $25 to invest in somebody in Chile or whatever. So is that kind of micro investing? Is it the same thing?
Well, it depends. There are definitely ways that you can invest for a little amount of money, even as little as $50, $100 on equity crowdfunding sites. There are three in
Mhm.
particular that have the market share right now, and that's WeFunder, Republic, and Start Engine. What you're talking about through Kiva is
Mhm.
mainly a donation, where that's through a nonprofit. So, just to be very clear, I am all
Mhm.
about donating to charities, helping nonprofits. But if you look at the amount of annual charitable giving in the US, it's about $475 billion, which is a lot of money,
Yeah.
$475 billion. However, that is equivalent to only about 1% of the value of the US stock market.
Oh my
So
God.
if we want to affect real change in the world, we have to not put the burden all on the nonprofits because they just don't have the funding to be able to do all the things that we want done, like cure
Right.
cancer and cure all these things and,
Mhm.
climate, blah, blah, blah. So how do we do that? Well, we need to be helping for-profit companies too.
Yeah, and it's a good way to, again, sort of cement that legacy. But are there wait, so basically those sites that you mentioned are sort of like Kickstarter for investing?
Yes,
Like,
exactly. That's exactly right.
and then how do you find how do you even know that a company wants that kind of investment? It's like, well, Apple and Google don't need it, but what are the companies that you find that, yes, you can make an investment for as little as 50 or $100 and it's going to really help that company?
Yeah. So what you're talking about, Apple, Google, those are publicly traded companies. So you can
Right.
go onto a site like E-Trade or Robinhood and you could buy and sell a share of stock. The
Hmm.
private markets, there are way more private companies than there are public companies. And it's a little different depending on the company. So
Yep.
the Securities and Exchange Commission here in the US it regulates the public markets. They don't have the ability to put the type of regulation on the private markets that they already have on the public markets because they'd
Hmm.
have to employ lots and lots more people. However, when equity crowdfunding on the sites that I mentioned was put into effect and was allowed back in 2016, the SEC did put guidelines on that.
Hmm.
So if a company is looking to fundraise through equity crowdfunding, they can go onto one of these sites and they put in all of their information. It's really not that hard because sites like republic.com have made it super easy for people to be
Hmm.
able to upload it, but it is the same. The same type of information has to be given for every company so that everyone has the same amount of information when they're making a decision about whether or not they want to invest.
That's cool. So it's a level playing field.
Exactly. Or they try to
Hmm.
make it so. Yes.
Yeah. And then is there, I mean, again, in this case, you're not necessarily investing for some kind of big payoff. You're just sort of believing in the company and helping them, but there could be a payoff ultimately.
Oh, there definitely could be. I mean, this is a risky asset class. That's why at the Angel Capital Association, where I was the chair back in 2021 to 23, we talk about you really only want to have maybe 5 to 10% of your investable assets in what we call illiquid or alternative assets. So
Hmm.
an angel investment or an investment in a private company, if you make that investment, it's not like E-Trade. You can't
Yeah.
turn around and sell that share of stock or
Hmm.
whatever right away. You have to
Yeah.
wait until there's a liquidity event so that you can get your money back. So that could take months, years,
Mhm.
and years. So really, it's just a matter of kind of knowing you really don't want to put money into an asset like that is a liquid if you need it in a certain period of time. So don't like
Right.
use your kid's college fund when they're 15. Typically.
Definitely not a get rich
That's not
quick
a good idea.
scheme.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
get rich quick scheme. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So how does that play? Like if you think of like, well, I want to make an impact and I want to, even though I don't have a gazillion dollars, I want to somehow make an impact. And, like I say, we talk a lot about legacy and I use a really broad thing like, okay, it isn't just putting your name in a library. How does the angel investing, it could just be like, hey, I know I'm doing something good for this company that I believe in, right?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the main reasons I wanted to write the book and have the
Hmm.
podcast is because I wanted people to talk about why. Why do they do it?
Right.
It
Hmm.
is risky. Yes, of course, we would love to get financial returns on every investment that we make. Does that happen? No. Do we get
Hmm.
financial returns on some? Yes. So it's just a matter of making sure that you have enough of a diversified portfolio so that the financial part is kind of taken care of.
Right.
But really the why comes down to like legacy. What do you care
Hmm.
about? What are the things that you would really like to see change in the world?
Right.
Healthcare, equal rights for
Hmm.
all people, the climate, poverty to be, eliminated. All these things are you could kind of pick what it is that you're most interested in and look toward finding the companies that are working on those things. And you could do that by looking on equity crowdfunding site if you wanted to do it that way. But the
Hmm.
thing that I usually recommend to people is just figure out what's going on in your own backyard because that's what happened
Hmm.
with me. I was living in Pittsburgh. I went to a meeting.
Yeah.
I learned about some people and I figured out that there's stuff happening in every city and every town. So just
Hmm.
go see what's going on.
That's cool. That's really great. So if somebody wants to, get started with this, or they start with one of those sites, or what if they have like a specific company in mind?
Sure. I mean, all of it is about just learning, getting to
Hmm.
know various companies, getting to know what's out there. I
Yeah.
always tell people don't start off by making investments. Start off by
Yeah.
learning, by getting to know people. One of the perks of becoming an angel investor or like just learning in this asset class is you get to meet people that you would never normally meet. So, I met a lot of people when I was working and
Yeah.
in a corporate job but we all were kind of working in the same industry and we kind of knew each other through that. But I started meeting all kinds of people in so many different industries and I became friends
Mhm.
with people that I would have never become friends with before just because we were focused on helping an entrepreneurial company and we were looking at that company and using our own expertise to make a decision about whether or not it was a company that we thought was worth investing in.
Mhm. That's cool. It's funny because what I do with some of my investments, and I know there are mutual funds that sort of focus on sustainability or social or whatever, but I'm actually sort of saying like, I don't want to put my money in whatever Home Depot because they support things that I don't support. I want to make sure that my
Yep.
mutual fund is not invested in Hobby Lobby or, things like that. But
Yeah.
this is a really much more proactive way rather than saying, I don't want to give these guys money to say, well, I do want to give these guys something.
That's right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the tour that you did this past summer. I know my wife saw you in Portsmouth. I was in Italy at the time, but talk about how that came about and the movie and things like that.
Yeah, so I got the opportunity to be an associate producer or an investor in a documentary called Show Her the Money.
Mhm.
And we're trying to bring awareness to the fact that women get less than 3% of the venture capital funding that's out there. And it really hasn't changed. It's somewhere
Yeah.
between 2 and 3%. And it's been like that for a very long time. Now, in angel world, and what I mean by that is where it's, much earlier stages when companies are just getting started and an angel
Mhm.
investor would basically be their investor. Those statistics have started to change a little bit for the better. We're starting to
Mhm.
see more like 25 to 30% of women founders getting funding. But the venture capital dollars, and those are the guys that put in girls. There's more of
Mhm.
the more girls nowadays, which is great, where they gather money from other people and including institutions, and then they invest those dollars into entrepreneurial companies. But in most cases, those entrepreneurial companies that a venture capital firm is investing in, that is later stage. And
Yeah.
it's been de-risked,
Mhm.
supposedly, to some level. So, what we're trying to do is make sure that we're all in alignment. But the movie was really out there to say, hey, let's bring awareness to this fact that, even though I had never been in the industry before and had never been to an angel investing meeting, when I found out how little funding went to women, I was just so shocked. I thought it would
Yeah.
was equal. I didn't even think about it. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm realizing, oh my gosh, not only, we're 50% of the population, but you can't tell me we only have 3% of the good ideas. I mean, it's
That's
crazy.
great.
So, we have to do something about this. What do we do? We need to just keep talking about it and bringing awareness to it. And that's what the
Yeah.
film was all about.
That's awesome. And what people can still find that? Is it out there on YouTube or
Yeah,
streaming?
so actually, you can't stream it on YouTube or Netflix necessarily, but if you go to showherthemoneymovie.com, we are having streaming weekends where you can actually get a link so that you can watch the movie. For a while, you could only see it in a theater. That was all through
Yeah.
2024, and that was the tour that we went on when we did come to
Mhm.
Portsmouth, which was fun.
Yeah.
And we screened the movie at various places. That was great because we could then have a lot of discussion after the
Right.
movie about what was
Mhm.
going on, and that was really our thing, and we ended up going to over 100 cities around the world. I didn't go to
Gosh.
every one of those cities, but I went to a bunch, and it was certainly
Mhm.
certainly a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great because again, like, most times if you're at a theater and you just kind of walk out and that's that. But if you're with those folks and you can interact in real time when they're really, you're getting sort of getting to talk to them when they're most excited, I would imagine.
Exactly. Yep.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about like what you personally think about legacy and what that means to you, what that word even means.
Yeah, you know what? I've thought a lot more about that probably in the last 2 to 3 years, and maybe it was our friend Kat O'Sullivan who,
Right.
really
Yeah.
started talking about living your legacy, and when I thought about it before, I probably thought, oh, legacy, that's like what you leave behind or what people
Mhm.
think about you when after you're dead. But really, legacy can be everything that you're doing right now, the types of things that you're talking about, the things that you're interested in, where you're putting your time, where you're putting your money. And, I've thought a lot about, especially money lately, when it comes
Mhm.
to, a lot of people, I know my dad's generation, especially, and my grandparents' generation, they had this mindset of like, we're going to leave an inheritance for our children, our grandchildren,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yep.
And in a lot of cases that happened. In some cases, I know plenty of families that ended up having healthcare challenges and then they ended up running out of money. And that wasn't the
Mhm.
case. But let's just say that that was the idea, that they wanted to leave this inheritance to the younger generations. And
Mhm.
I just don't see as many people in my generation, Generation X and below,
Mhm.
talking about that anymore. I think
Yeah.
they're more like, "Hey, we wanna live our life, use the money that we have in order to, do the things we wanna do, support the causes that we care about, support the people that we care about while we're alive." And I
Right.
think that's more a lot about what I've been thinking about lately.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, my kids aren't expecting anything because I've told them, I'm like, I'm going to stay alive till I spend my last cent. I don't
That's
expect,
right. Yes.
but that I think that generation is a little bit more, they realize like, well, it's on them. They're going to do whatever they have to do. So
Yes.
very cool. And how about, I always ask this in the podcast just for fun, but like people, like when you go on stage, you might have a walk on song. Have you ever
Mhm.
thought about what your walk off
My walk-off
of
song
song
would
might be?
be so I usually say that my, walk-on song is, "Unstoppable" by Sia,
Mhm. Yep.
but she also sings that song Titanium, so I
Yeah.
would just wanna go out on that note because I'd be like, "I'm titanium, you can't bring me down," you know, like that kinda thing.
I'm already working on my playlist for the memorial one. So,
There you go. Yeah, and you
um,
know what? My husband always says, "Why don't we just have more celebration of life parties while we're still alive? You could have one every year. You could call it a
yeah.
birthday party, but really, you could just be like, "Hey, let's get together the people that we never get to see." I hate the fact that in a lot of cases, the only time I see people that are
Mhm.
like my extended family or long
Yeah.
lost friends or whatever is at a funeral or a
Yeah.
wedding, but
Yeah.
then it gets
So
to a
now,
point where
and these days it's like, when you get to be my age, it's like the funerals are a lot more common than the weddings. So
exactly.
yeah.
Yes.
There was an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't know if you ever watched the Larry David show, but it was
Uh,
so funny because in one episode, I think it was Albert Brooks, decided that he wanted to have his funeral while he was still alive. So the funeral was downstairs and he was upstairs watching it in the bedroom. Well, so he could get to see all the people saying nice things about him and stuff.
it's
And I
hilarious.
thought, that's crazy, but that's kind of a cool idea. Like,
Yeah,
you have to think before you die. It's like, don't wait till somebody's dead to say nice things about them. So
that's exactly right.
that's pretty funny. So you have a walk-off song. Have you ever thought like, okay, they're going to make the Marcia Dawood story. Who's the lead actress?
Jeez. Oh gosh, I don't even know who the lead actress would be, but I do think about like what I'm trying to do with this whole like getting people to learn about investing in the
Hmm.
changes that they want to see in the world.
Yep.
This idea of trying to demystify it. Sometimes I think to myself, what am I doing? Like I'm like I'm talking about this, and people sometimes are like, "Oh, that's really cool." Or, a lot of times
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh, that's really interesting." But then it's not like a trending topic. It's not like
Right.
a lot of people are talking about it. So then it gets to a point where people are like, that's kind of neat. But then they kind of forget about it, they go on to the next thing. And, so I kind of feel like that's something that the movie need to be made about. And I
Yeah.
feel like the Show Her the Money documentary was like the first part of that because in that film we're trying to highlight the entrepreneurs and get people to
Yeah.
see like, hey, this is what an entrepreneurial company really is. What I would
Right.
love is if there was a movie about me after I was gone that really highlighted what it meant to be an investor and maybe go back to some of those entrepreneurial companies who would talk about,
Mm.
oh,
Yeah.
this person invested in my company and they made such a difference because of X, Y,
Mhm.
and Z. And actually give a good example in my book. Our friend Sue Bevan Baggett is an
Yep.
incredible mentor to companies. And there are lots and lots of companies that I know who she's helped and have
Mhm.
just said amazing things about her. And one in particular, Kirsten Moorfield of Cloverleaf, who is just said amazing things about her. Those are the types of stories I think that we
Mhm.
would have. So I don't know if it had to be like some super fancy actress or actor that
Yeah.
would be playing me. It'd be more like, let's tell the stories that really
Yeah,
mattered.
that's awesome.
And,
Yeah.
that would be
Okay,
the legacy I'd
we'll make
want.
yours a documentary then. So,
There you go.
but that's pretty cool because I think a lot of folks think, what possible difference can I make with my $100 or whatever
That's
it might be,
exactly right.
right? So what do you tell those folks where they just think like, I'm not going to be able to make any impact on this with my little amount of time or money?
Yeah. Well, imagine though, if everyone, if there were all of the adults, okay, so you
Mhm.
figure there's like 330 million people in the US. We'll just use the US for right now. You could just say
Yep.
the whole world too, but we'll just make the numbers easy, right?
Yeah.
There's about 250 million adults in the US. So
Mhm.
imagine if every one of those people invested just $100 in a
Right.
year or $100 every month. I mean,
Mhm.
now you're talking about that compounding and making such a difference into billions of dollars that could
Yeah.
actually help to start to cure,
Mhm.
healthcare disease, anything that you can think of that we
Right.
really need change in the world.
That's pretty cool. I think we should end on that note. Anything else that I should have asked that I didn't?
No, I will say that I've been terrible. I've been a terrible book promoter though. So I have the book, Do Good
Yeah.
While Doing Well. There's a workbook too. I
I have
forget to
worked.
tell people about the workbook only because there's a lot to tell about the book, but the
Yeah.
workbook's pretty cool because you get to walk through some exercises. So if people are like, oh, that sounds like a really cool idea, but I really don't know how to get started, the workbook
Mhm.
for 12
Yeah.
bucks is like that's your thing to do.
That's awesome. I'll put a link below and so that people can check it out. This has been fun. Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for
And
having me.
I hope to see you again in real life before too long. Masha and I go back a ways. It's so funny because a lot of the guests on the podcast, just because have been from Horror Public Speaking, that program we did a few years ago, because there's just something about that group, people that came out of that group, some amazing people. We're going to talk to Kat in a couple of weeks. You mentioned her earlier about
Yeah.
living your legacy and all that kind of fun stuff. So thanks
Awesome.
again, and we will see you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast. Please subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast, and do it now while you're still alive and kicking. Check out other episodes at ohshitimdead.com.